Russian losses amount to approximately $100 billion. This is the result of drone attacks by the security service of Ukraine and the defense forces on oil and gas industry facilities, according to The Sun. Long-range drone strikes on Russian oil and gas facilities have become part of targeted campaign aimed at striking at the heart of the Russian economy. Military intelligence expert Philippe Ingram noted that such attacks not only create problems in the daily lives of Russian citizens, but can also cause fuel shortages, which significantly complicates the Kremlin's ability to wage war against Ukraine.
Long-range drones flying 1,000 kilometers or more are turning Russia's sprawling oil and gas empire into a chain of infernos.
He added that strikes on oil refineries directly reduce the Kremlin's revenues. Before the full-scale invasion, energy experts provided about 40% of the Russian Federation's budget, and now about 30% despite sanctions. Ingram also noted that Ukrainian success in such operations was made possible by coordination with Western partners and insiders who helped identify the most vulnerable elements of critical infrastructure. As reported, according to the American Institute for the Study of War, Russian state media acknowledge the shortage of gasoline in Russia, but downplay the role of Ukrainians' deep strike campaign against oil refineries in causing this shortage. According to Russian media reports, the gasoline shortage in Russia has already affected more than 20 regions. As a reminder, strikes by Ukrainian drones in recent months have disabled at least 17% of the oil refining capacity of Russian refineries, which processed about 1.1 million barrels of oil per day, according to Reuters estimates. During August, the Novokuybышevsk refinery, with a processing capacity of 8.3 million tons per year, the Saratov refinery, 5.8 million tons, the Volgograd refinery, 14.8 million tons, and the Syzran refinery, 8.5 million tons, were completely shut down, with total capacity downtime for the month reaching 6.4 million tons. In September, the Ryazan oil refinery, which provides about 5% of Russian refining capacity, was partially shut down. Despite 3.5 years of full-scale war, EU countries continue to pay Russia around 1 billion euros per month for oil and gas. This was reported by The Times, as reported by Tensor.net. According to the publication, until 2022, the EU imported about 25 million tons of energy resources from Russia every month. Since then, volumes have fallen by 9/10, but purchases, mainly gas, still amounted to more than 1 billion euros in August, the article says. The largest buyers of gas over the past year were France, Hungary, Slovakia, Spain, and Belgium. Some countries, such as Hungary and Slovakia, continue to receive oil via the Druzhba pipeline thanks to exemptions from the embargo. According to analysts, the main reason is price. Russian oil in 2024 was about 20% cheaper than alternative options.
European governments may claim that their support for Ukraine is unequivocal. But in reality, the Russian military machine is still closely linked to the West through global supply chains. The publication writes, "The UK has also left a loophole. It does not buy Russian oil directly, but imports fuel made from it in India and Turkey."
Imagine that Europe turns off the tap. No more Russian oil or gas imports, while Ukraine intensifies its long-range strikes on energy infrastructure. The combined impact would reshape the war, the region's political economy, and energy geopolitics in ways both profound and irreversible. Collapse of core funding for Russia's war effort. If Europe seizes its current 1 billion euros per month payments for Russian energy imports, Russia's budget would lose one of its last resilient revenue pillars. The Kremlin depends heavily on energy export receipts to sustain the war machine. Losing European income would force painful cuts, degrade supply procurements for military operations, and strain social welfare and state apparatus. The drop in energy revenues would combine with Ukraine's destruction of refineries, pumping stations, and pipelines, creating cascading failures in Russia's ability to produce fuel. This isn't just about short-term fuel shortages. It's about dismantling critical infrastructure that supports arms production, troop movements, and power generation. Domestic crisis in Russia, loss of imported revenue plus frequent disruptions will likely cause increasing fuel scarcity for civilians, long lines, rising prices, black markets. This fuels discontent, eroding domestic support for the war and increasing pressure on regional administrations for accountability. Disruptions to industrial activity, key industries, transportation, agriculture, energy, chemicals need refined fuel and reliable power. Disruption here inflicts economic damage that ripples outward. Geographical inequality in impact. Border regions and urban centers may feel effects faster. More remote areas may suffer from systemic breakdowns of supply chains and infrastructure. Strengthening Ukrainian strategic leverage. For Ukraine, the combination of offensive strikes plus Europe's energy disengagement means a stronger negotiating position. In any future peace talks or ceasefire negotiations, Ukraine won't only have battlefield successes but economic pressure backing them. Russia will be forced to contend not just with attrition but with revenue collapse. Increased international solidarity. Countries suffering high energy cost or supply volatility will pressure their governments to accelerate diversification and support Ukraine more overtly. Better deterrence. Knowing that Europe is prepared to sever energy ties adds weight to Ukraine's military pressure. Russia can no longer count on energy sales to Europe as safety valve. Energy reliance and European transitions. If Europe fully withdraws from Russian energy, transitions happen. Massive investment in alternative energy sources, renewables, nuclear, LNG imports becomes a necessity rather than choice. Greater political and infrastructural cooperation with energy-rich countries in Central Asia, the Middle East, and non-Russian suppliers. Acceleration of reforms and energy efficiency, grid reliability, supply diversification. Countries that adapt faster will mitigate economic pain. Those slow to move may face shortages and inflation. Geopolitical risk and retaliation. This scenario also carries serious risks. Russia will respond. Expect efforts to find new buyers, China, India, strengthen bilateral trade deals or use coercive tactics, cyber attacks, supply chain disruptions, or even military provocations to reassert influence. Potential for energy shock in Europe. Disrupting Russian flows overnight risks supply gaps, price spikes, and political discontent among consumers. Energy security and buffer stocks become critically important. That transition must be managed to avoid unintended humanitarian or economic fallout. Strain within Europe. Countries reliant on cheaper Russian energy or still under exemptions may lack politically or economically, creating fractures in EU solidarity. Final thought. If Europe fully rejects Russian oil and gas in concert with Ukrainians' effective military campaign, especially deep strikes on energy infrastructure, then the worst economic change. What was once Russia's war tax paid by Europe becomes a strategic liability for Moscow. Europe would not only be isolating Russia economically, but helping tear down the logistical and financial scaffolding that enables its aggression. Yes, the cost and risk are real, but the alternative, continuing business as usual while Ukraine bleeds and Russia regenerates, might be a higher price to pay in the long run. The decisive choice is between managing gradual decline of Russia's war capability or risking open escalation. And Europe, backed by Ukrainians' resolve, has the means to force the decline. That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Support Ukraine, like and subscribe.